Hello, I'm Bill Jasper, Senior Editor of the New American Magazine, and today we have a very special guest, Lieutenant General Thomas G. McINERNEY, U.S. Air Force retired. General McINERNEY is a very distinguished military leader, and we're very fortunate to have him with us today. But you have been exposing something that's very important concerning the use of computers by secret elements of our government, a computer program, Scorecard and Hamr. So I would just like to turn it over to you, and you explain to our listeners and our viewers what it is that this program is and why, how you came to know about it, and why it's so vital that all Americans find out about it.
Yes, Bill, thank you very much. Hamr Scorecard, I first was introduced to it in March of 2017 when I did a radio show with Dave Janda, Operation Freedom. And I had been, just prior to going on to that show, I was notified by retired Air Force, Navy four-star Admiral Ace Lyons, who is no longer with us, but told me about the Hamr program. And the Hamr program was a SIGINT, Signals Intelligence Program, that the CIA had been using to find terrorists and getting information on what terrorists were doing. A very, very significant program. I was talking about it at that time, having to do with the Russian collusion and how the Obama-Biden administration, under the guise of Jim Clapper and John Brennan, had used this tool, and they'd moved it out 2 weeks after Obama took over. They moved it to a classified SCIF in Port Washington in Maryland. They moved it from the CIA location. And they were listening to American citizens, and they were listening to the Trump campaign and many other people. Now, the reason I mention this is because I think we all know the CIA is not authorized to listen to American citizens. And so they were using this tool in that fashion, which they were trying to cover up what they had done in the Russian hoax, the Russian collusion issue, and all the time we spent on what President Trump had done or had not done in reality when the Mueller report came out. And this is all linked to today, because if you take what they did on the Russian collusion, Russian hoax, for 3 years and the $40 million they spent and what they put America through, and then they went into an impeachment exercise, and then they all of a sudden it shows up here. Now, how did it reappear on my radar? It appeared on my radar a week ago Sunday, on the 1st of November. I got a call from a source that they were going to use it, and they had a new application, and if you will, called Scorecard, that could change votes on voting in voting tallies, not on voting machines, but on voting tallies when they got on the internet. So, if you will, for your listeners and viewers, think of Hamr as an iPhone and all the applications you have on your iPhone to do all the different things you do. Think of Scorecard that will go into voting inventories and change the score up to 3%. It's very elaborate, very significant. It was developed by a CIA contractor called Dennis Montgomery, and he built this in 2003 as this foreign surveillance tool. Now, this shocked me. Here it is Sunday night, and the election's going to be on Tuesday. So I contacted a number of people, and Steve Bannon was one of them. and I went on Steve's show, I think mid-afternoon, 1 or 2 o'clock on on the 2nd of November, and described what I'm describing to you, and described the implications. The implications I described were that President Trump is going to lose this election. They're going to lose it because they're using Hamr in the battleground states. They're not doing it in all of them. You know, you don't do anything in New York or California or Illinois. You go to the battleground states. President Obama and Biden had used it in 2012 in Florida, and then they had used it in the run-ups to make sure it was up to speed, and that in the uh, uh, elections, the primaries, in which Bernie Sanders lost, and they used Hamr to help change that data. And so they had it up, and they were running. They used Hamr Scorecard, so it was ready to go. And I'm talking on Monday before the election and predicting the loss of the election, unless the administration did something about it. And I couldn't get to the right people in the administration that could watch for this. But lo and behold, guess what happened? The election was lost. Now, when you go through the sniff test and you start thinking about it, you have a candidate, Biden, who did not have one full press conference of an hour of talk. Didn't do that. Stayed in his basement. Barely, I mean, just didn't do any campaigning that was significant, and wasn't talking to the American people. Couldn't get through a sentence half the time when he did. And
didn't have any campaign rallies that amounted to more than a few dozen people.
Right, in cars blowing their horn. And so you're getting now into the sniff test, Bill, and saying, how could this chap win an overwhelming election when there's 71 million people that voted for Trump? And I would probably say it's going to turn out, when we find these facts out, 72 or 73 million people, because of the shifting change in Hamr. So you've got to go through the analysis of all these factors. The other thing is the write-in ballots that were mailed to people, and you're hearing all sorts of things. Of course, we're all familiar with absentee ballots that have a chain of custody to them. The mail-in ballots had no chain of custody. And then you hear about the voting machines in Michigan and the different problems there, which Hamr is not connected with. And then you hear about like Dominion Software that wrote the software, and I think there were 5,500 ballots, software in Michigan that were changed because they discovered it and corrected it, but they had changed Trump's name to Biden, and that was located in 30 states, that software, and I think in 47 or 40 some different precincts in Michigan. And then you go down to the dead people. Joe Frazier voted in this election, and how long has Joe been dead? And all the other dead people. And then you go to the people with the absentee ballots that had moved. Now, all of this is tactical deception, in my opinion. The key point in the military terms, Bill, is the Schwerpunkt. Where is the key attack? And the key attack was with Hamr and Scorecard, because that shifted big numbers.
It can take months to sort through all of these other common election fraud, cheating that we see with all of the monitors being blocked from observing, and the absentee ballots and all of that. But if they keep us involved in all of that while they are controlling the elections with something like the centralized computer program like this, that guarantees we'll never have another free election.
Precisely. Precisely. Now, for your listeners and viewers, the way this works is the voting machines are independent. They're not connected to the internet, although I'm starting to see some evidence. There were some voting machines in Texas, I heard, that were connected to the internet. But Hamr doesn't work that way. The way Hamr works is most of the states, the data is funneled from the precincts into the Secretary of State's office. They have a server that collects these numbers, and then that number is sent out. They call them transfer points. Hamr goes into the transfer points, and say, like you had in Michigan at 0400 in the morning on the 4th, when people had gone home, 138,000 votes came in, all for Joe Biden. And that was, to me, a prime target for Hamr. It comes in, people aren't there, not looking. And so the way we have to discover this is you've got to go back and count manually what the data that was flowing in to the transfer points, and then what was the data that came out. Now that's what the Trump team and the DOJ have got to do, because that changes numbers that are significant, 138,000. And if you look at the difference in all the 5 states, that would have a significant impact. So that is, to me, is the real jewel, the real keystone that we've got to be looking at. All of the others, like you say, are tactical deception. We can chase them for months, and we're still only going to get a piddling number of votes. How did he do it in such an overwhelming fashion when he had such an uncharacteristic appeal and program in running? Yet they seem to have supreme confidence. Now, they had the media working for them, saying, there was going to be an overwhelming blue wave, et cetera, et cetera. And the down ballots, look at the down ballots. The down ballots didn't reflect the overwhelming vote that Biden got, did they? So
Right.
again, that's another sniff test.
As one commentator put it, this would be the first election where the coattails didn't follow the coat, and so there were no coattails to this. So
precisely,
we see no evidence that this great overwhelming support for this non-candidate Joe Biden translated into any downstream down ballot support, and that's I think, as you say, a key sniff test. It shows that they didn't have this completely all worked out in order to that, or they were just the coup plotters are so confident that they're going to be able to pull this off that they figure they can be sloppy like that, and will still go for it.
And that's exactly it. And then you see Fox News, for which I worked 16 and a half years as a military analyst, immediately call Virginia within less than 5 minutes of the polls closing in favor of Biden. They call Arizona, and then they call. Now, I don't know the rationale, but I know it's not the same Fox News that I joined 16 and a half years ago, and I know why they fired me, because I was such a strong supporter of President Trump. But I mean, they said it was because I called John McCain Songbird John. A lot of people call John Songbird John. But so when you see that the mainstream media, and going to prove your point, well, the people wouldn't notice, when you have the mainstream media rolling in behind it, and you look at the technical media, the Twitters and Facebooks and all that, on the censoring that they have done on programs, for instance, on Hunter Biden's particular escapades, the criminality that he was involved there, and Joe Biden was, how they covered all that up. We have a massive effort by the mainstream media to cover this up, and they hope in declaring him, how the mainstream media has declared him as the winner without any state officially declaring that. And of course,
Right, and
many of the polls.
this is so important for Americans to realize and to understand, is not to allow themselves to be psychologically manipulated here by making these calls ahead of any official call. We're having the media anoint and crown Biden as our new king. When we really haven't followed any of the constitutional directives here. It's the state legislatures that appoint the electors to the Electoral College, and we have to make sure that our state legislatures, particularly those that are not controlled by the blue wave, will hold firm on that and will not allow Fox News or CBS, CNN, or whatnot to dictate who is going to be our new president.
Precisely. And they are counting on that. And they got a little sloppy, and that's why I believe they can do it. But for instance, Fox News let Sidney Powell, General Mike Flynn's lawyer, go on Lou Dobbs last Friday. And she mentioned Hamr and Scorecard. She was on the Maria show on Sunday, but she didn't mention Hamr and Scorecard. Now, those are
Right.
the only.
I noticed that she mentioned computer fraud just kind of in general, but she didn't mention Hamr or Scorecard by name, or CIA meddling, any of that. What do you make of that?
Well, I believe that Maria said, for me to get you on, Sidney, again, I worked for him for 16 and a half years. So, for me to get you on, you can't mention Hamr and Scorecard. Now, that is pretty outstanding. Yesterday, Brian Kilmeade mentioned Hamr and Scorecard. Now, they're starting to face a little pressure because they are losing their brand name. They tilted on this. The person who runs their war room is a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, and like Chris Wallace, they're not hiding it. Now, we don't have time to go into why Fox is what they're doing, but they were always got at least a fair and balanced, in my opinion. They never asked me in 16 and a half years to say anything, but they have switched. They have flipped. I mean, I can tell you, and they were the primary outlet in the mainstream media because they were so competitive. No longer true. Someone got to them. And so Hannity, Tucker, none of them, Laura, none of them have had anyone on that will talk about Hamr and Scorecard. Now, that is pretty surprising, isn't it? Even Fox and Friends doesn't have anyone that will talk about them in the depth that you and I are talking about today. And
Well,
that's why what you're doing is so important to America, Bill. I can't tell you how important what you are doing is to this nation and to our success. Because if we don't get this right, there will never be another free American election. That cyber warfare will dominate the voting machines.
Well, General, it would seem to me that from a military tactical strategic standpoint, that it would have been incumbent upon the president as commander in chief and in charge of all of our police forces as well of the federal level, that he would have sent U.S. Marshals or whatever forces needed to Fort Washington to lock down, clamp down, confiscate the program if it hasn't already been moved. Do you know anything about that? How are we going to get the proof that we need?
I don't know, but I do know that we have the data that flowed in and that we can do the analysis. I'm hoping the president, and I hope your listeners will say, Mr. President, let's examine Hamr and Scorecard in great depth. Let's look at it, because without that information, he's going to come back in, as we talked about, on the tactical deception means of corruption, but it's going to be piddling. Hamr Scorecard is what really tilted it. And that's why they had the conference. Now, you're going to probably ask me, well, why didn't they do that in 2016? Let me just say, in a guarded way, in 2016, they tried, but for whatever reason, something happened and it didn't work. And that's why everybody thought, and why to this day, Hillary Clinton was so shocked that she lost. And for 4 years, they have been trying to get into and saying all the illegitimate, that Trump wasn't a legitimate president, et cetera, and all the things they did to him, using the politicized intelligence community. We now know what they've done. We're waiting for the Durham report. And of course, so this one, they doubled up and they really made sure they won, because you're not going to ever hear anything about Hunter Biden or John Durham or any of the reports. That will disappear. And they
Right. We've seen for the last 4 years where all the media were 24/7, Russia, 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 every kind of racism, extremism, one label they could put on Trump and conservatives, nonstop going on that, but not a word about all of the corruption, all of the blatant bribery and potential treason on the part of Hunter Biden and his father, Joe Biden. That cannot be subjected to the magnifying glass. That has to be swept aside, and that's what we've seen. We know that if they can, they'll sweep all of this aside and everything else that would reflect any kind of corruption on the elections. So it's very important for Americans to spread this and to get the talk show hosts, at the very least, and the social media, alternative media, to start mentioning this, so that we have the public support for when President Trump actually does move on this, and I hope it is soon, or we're not going to see, as you said, we're not going to see another election, another free election. They have elections all the time in communist countries. They have them in China, they have them in Russia, every place else. But we know that, as Stalin said, it's I don't care how you have the elections, just we want to count the votes. So they are counting the votes now, and they're doing it in a very illegal way. This is an important point. Most Americans know that it's illegal for the CIA to spy on Americans here in this country, and so this program, which was developed for the CIA, you mentioned Dennis Montgomery. He is the gentleman, the computer expert who developed this for the CIA, and then he exposed it as a whistleblower. So my understanding is there are huge gajillion terabytes of data that he brought out, very damning evidence. So we do have quite a bit of evidence on this, and it shows that this program does exist and has been used. Some of this has come out in WikiLeaks. So we know that they've been doing this for a number of years. And as you say, past elections, they have begun using it. And apparently if they didn't perfect it, they got it to a level where they could actually throw the big election just this past week. But this is correct. All illegal. This is all illegal, unconstitutional, criminal, what they are doing. Just using the program here, even before this past week came about.
Exactly. And it'd be the biggest crime and action again in our history. What we are talking about right now, Bill, is the greatest crime in our history. And this was what we call a SAP program, a special access program, and very few people have knowledge of it. I could give a lot more background on it and how it was converted. But the important thing is this has changed voting in our nation. Let me quote what you quoted and what Joseph Stalin said. I consider it completely unimportant who in the party will vote or how. But what is extraordinarily important is this: who will count the votes?
Yeah.
Computers count
Very
the
good.
votes
I'm
for
glad,
us
I'm
now.
glad you brought up that quote. Yes.
Computers do our counting for us now. And between you and I, this is a trivial solution to do. And when you have all the mainstream media weighing in the manner they have, that we have we're at a tipping point in America on which this is go with the direction we're going, and that's again why I feel it's so important what you are doing, Bill, and what the American people have to do, because the mainstream media has bowed out. They have tipped, and they are on their side, and they are censoring us. With the social media, they are censoring us even on the mainstream media, because Fox itself will not mention, or very rare, that Hammer scorecard exists or explain to their listeners what it is.
Right.
And
So we see that the coup took place in the media years ago. The globalists, those who are pushing this, captured most of the media years ago, and now so the media coup took place long before the political coup, and that they recognized that that was going to be essential to pull off the political coup.
exactly, exactly. And they did it in our education system. It is very elaborate. It's been patient, but now we are at that key tipping point, and the American people have got to rise up and demand from this president that they investigate, and the Justice Department investigate Hammer and Scorecard and all the electronic scoring that was done and the patterns behavior, and put the whole patterns of behavior, and this is how we do it in the intel business, get the patterns of behavior and weigh it down, and then look at where the key points, the key states, what is going on. I mean, we're still counting in Pennsylvania. We're still counting in Arizona. We're still counting in Georgia. And yet they have been crowned. And the fact is, it is dangerous to do this. And this tide that they're trying to sweep over us and ignore it and praise new President elect Biden, let's do it constitutionally. If he won legally, I have no problem. But if what transpired was using a cyber warfare package called Hammer and Scorecard, I am deeply troubled, because our nation is now at risk. Treason has been committed.
That's a very important point to make. This is treason. This is treason, and we see many of the people who are involved in pushing this are actually officially aligned with our enemies, particularly the communist Chinese in Beijing, but also with Russia. The ones who are shouting Russia, Russia, Russia the loudest are the ones that have been in bed with Russia and Ukraine and other countries like that.
Precisely. The globalists and all of them. And their huge amounts of money that we're facing. So you are doing a great service to the nation, Bill, and the American people, to educate them. And they must say to the White House and to the public, the American people must rise up and say, we want a full accounting of the electronic scoring in all the states, but primarily the battleground state that was a determining factor. We must have that, so we are satisfied. If you and I are satisfied once that is done, then we accept the result. But if it's not done and it's swept over with the tide of the mainstream media declaring Biden as the president-elect, et cetera, then we have done a great disservice to this great nation. That's not going to happen while you and I are around. I know that.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to also, people are saying, well, okay, what can we do? Well, we can appeal to, as you say, to the president, let him know that, hey, we need to get into this. Do not yield to all of the pressure from the media and even from those within the Republican Party who are just saying, oh, it's time to move on. Let's not belabor the point. This is not belaboring a partisan point. This is, as you say, if Joe Biden had won fair and square, I might not like it, but that we accept that. That's the way it works. But when it is clearly a case of total fraud and treason at very high levels, then we can't accept that, and we can't just move on and say okay, because what comes after that is too frightful to contemplate. So people are saying, what can I do? And in addition, I would like to stress that people can and must besiege their state legislatures, because they're the ones who are going to seat electors. And many of the governors and the secretaries of state and attorney generals and the state legislatures are being pressured by the media, by the constant drumbeat of President-elect Biden, Vice President-elect Harris. They say that enough that we're supposed to just accept that. No, we can't accept that, and we have to make sure that our state legislators say, no, we're going to wait until we have a full accounting, and we're going to appoint the electors to the Electoral College who decide who is truly the president in the constitutional manner.
Precisely. And we're going to have to challenge maybe that 14 December date in which they're supposed to declare that. But whatever it is, we must do it, and the president's got to move expeditiously to move out and examine Hamr and Scorecard fully, so that he's satisfied, and the American people, that I can come to you and say, I'm satisfied that it was either used or it wasn't used, and that the scoring that they have is accurate.
Well, General, thank you so much for taking on this challenge and for fighting this fight. This is this is the crowning of your career, I'm sure. And for any soldier, any fighting man, we have to jump into this full bore. And we'd like to have you back on again. Hopefully, you're going to be besieged with requests now, and that you're going to be busy from morning till night on media getting this message out. But God bless you. Keep up the battle. Keep up the good work. And we thank you very much, General.
Thank you, Bill, and God bless you. And anytime you want me, I'm ready to go for you to support what you are doing to tell America what the facts are. Thank you.
Thank you, General.